What's up, interwebs? I am David Long. How you doing today? I hope you're doing well. Great to be hanging out with you in my friends and fans group. Family, we're family. It's all good. I love you guys. Hope you're doing really well. Hope you're having a great day, and we're gonna get into some Q&A. It's gonna happen. We have somebody joining us. Who is it? It's my homie Alyosha. What's up, Alyosha? Now, for many of you who know me and my buddy Alyosha, we make Integral Review, and we just came out with our brand new podcast of Integral Review about the pickup community. It's doing pretty well so far. It's already past our psychedelics episode, and it seems like people are liking it. I'm actually surprised that we're not getting more negative comments and hate for doing such a taboo subject, but pleasantly surprised. Maybe we did a good enough job where we addressed people's concerns enough to where they're not mad at us. Let's hope so, right? What else can I tell you guys that I'm working on? Working on a brand new special vlog with my buddy Kai that's centered around the Flux Fest, and I'm super excited about that. I'm not gonna tell you too much about it, but he's helping me filming it, and he's got really nice equipment, and so far it's looking really great. I'm a little bit behind on uploading the Q&As to YouTube because I've been going through and editing them, which condenses them down, gets them all nice and tight. Hopefully that's better for your viewing pleasure. But yeah, it's taken me a little bit of time to do, so please bear with me on that. I got a few questions today. I can tell you right off the top that we're going to be talking about the intellectual dark web. They're coming to get me. Ish. They found us out. Wait, maybe they're gone. Okay, I think they're gone. So we're going to talk about the intellectual dark web, and Ken Wilber basically says that the members of the intellectual dark web are integral, and we're going to deal with that. We're going to look at the 10 Commandments. It has been suggested that I help to amend and upgrade the 10 Commandments, so we're going to look at that. And we're going to talk about my history as a philosopher and a seeker. I haven't really talked about that before, believe it or not. Maybe I've mentioned it briefly and people have asked me here and there, but I don't think I've really dove in and talked about that. So we're going to go through that kind of history today. And of course, as always, if you have other questions, type them all up, put them down there below, and as they come through, we will deal with them. So first things first, let's deal with these 10 Commandments, shall we?
Woe unto thee! You are not worthy to receive these 10 Commandments.
We will not live by your commandments, we're free!
Hey, there is no freedom without the law.
Whose law, Moses? Yours? Did you carve those tablets to become a prince over us?
The first commandment is no other gods before me. We could do away with that one. We don't really need that, especially since that guy's not real. That's super tribalistic. Yes. Super tribalistic. Even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious. If you say it loud enough, you'll always suffer cautious. Super tribalistic. Be part of your tribe. The second law is don't keep idols. And maybe this is good, don't put people on too high of a pedestal. But I do think it's good to have role models. And it also makes sense to say that your ultimate name and image and concept of God is your ultimate boundary from God. So maybe something about intellectual humility or not following another person, but going your own way and achieving things for yourself. That's good stuff. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. This is another thing that's not important for life. Remember to keep the Sabbath day holy. The best version of that is make sure you keep a day to relax and spend some time to think about stuff and take some sacred you time and get in touch with your spiritual practice. That's probably a value. Honor your father and mother. Well, sometimes your father and mother are not mature. There's a point at which you have to put your father and mother into some kind of a perspective and be like, well, maybe mom and dad weren't that mature, but they were just kids, they're trying their best themselves and I forgive them or something. Maybe there is some kind of honor your father and mother or respect the sacrifices that they've given for you or something. Maybe there's something good about that. But in general, these are just people. And sometimes they're not healthy enough to be in your life if you're a healthy person. person. So, thou shalt not kill. Okay, well, what if he breaks into your house? What if you're protecting people? You know what I mean? So, like, even this is, like, not that good. Maybe murder is a good one here, or, like, respect the autonomy of other people. Don't treat other people as a means to your ends. Don't commit adultery. I would say be true to your word to the best of your ability. But yeah, don't commit adultery is a pretty good one to live by, I would say. If you've made promises to your spouse, you should really honor that. In fact, you know, I feel like maybe people take marriage too lightly nowadays. I'm not saying that we shouldn't make those commitments to people, because I know that I want to be in the kind of relationship where I know a person is going to actually stick with me through some hard times. I'm going to be with you through this, through the hard times, through the poor times, through the struggle. I'm here for you. I got your back. And when they say that to me, and when I say that to them, that's real ish. I think we should honor and respect that. I don't think we should be saying it lightly. I don't think we should be rushing kids into it. I think if we're going to be doing something like this, we really need to respect the vows that we're taking and not just being like, this isn't convenient for me anymore, I'm brushing it off. That isn't to say that you should continue to stick with somebody who's clearly abusing you and is not going to change or something like that. But definitely people are quitting on other people way too quickly, I think, in some cases. It goes both ways. Sometimes people are staying with people too long too. You shall not steal. I mean, come on. These are like such easy ones. Don't steal. Don't kill. Don't cheat on your wife. Don't bear false witness, which is, I guess, like, don't gossip about people. What's up, Brett? How you doing, buddy? Don't worry, we're going to get to your dark web question in a bit. I'm just looking at the 10 Commandments as was requested and figuring out how we can make some amendments. We are right now on commandment number 9. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. And don't covet your neighbor's ass.
Well, I want that.
You shall not covet your neighbor's goods. I guess that's the same. They changed ass to goods. Okay, so don't be jealous.
Don't be jealous that I've been chatting online with babes all day.
Don't want what you don't have. Be happy with what you got. Okay, so first let's see if we can say that there's anything good about what's there. If there's anything salvageable with these commandments. Some of these are so basic, like don't kill and don't steal. But I mean, in certain circumstances, you might have to kill or you might have to steal. It's just parts of life. Sometimes you have to do it. We all kill to eat, so there's probably a hierarchy of things that are better and worse to kill. Or we probably all have to kill for survival if someone wants to break in and kill us. We might have to defend ourselves. Don't steal. I'm trying to think of a case I could potentially make for stealing something. The world isn't always fair. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to survive, and there's probably better and worse places to steal from. If you're gonna steal people, you should probably steal from a big corporation, not some local mom and pop place. Okay, and I'm not an advocate for stealing, but if you gotta steal to survive, I'm not as upset with you. Anyways, the respect your father and mother, maybe there's something to that. But I mean, I think you could pretty much easily improve on the 10 Commandments almost immediately by talking about some equality. Alyosha says, steal from the rich.
Rob the poor to feed the rich. Am I right?
But I think you could immediately improve on the 10 Commandments just with, like, no slavery. Because remember, Jesus said some stuff like slaves to serve their Christian masters especially well and stuff like this. So these 10 Commandments could be improved on drastically with something like, make sure you treat all men and women equally. All life is sacred or something like that. Steal from Alyosha, Brett says. Watch out, Alyosha, they're coming for your dish, man. Brett, are you rich? Are you feeling a little bit defensive about this? He's like, hey, don't come for my dish. Go after Alyosha. Okay, but another thing I think would be something like stand up for what's good and true. Maybe that should be a commandment. Work on yourself and stand up for what's good and true. Alyosha says, the joke is on you, he doesn't have anything. So you could try to steal from him, but he doesn't have much to steal, unfortunately. That's why you gotta steal from the rich, because they have all the ish, and the gap between the rich and the poor is ever widening. Anyone else have any ideas about how we could improve these 10 Commandments? I'm thinking with something about equality in there, something about working on yourself and self-improvement. I don't really see anything like that. Nothing about standing up for what's good, nothing about the equality of man or self-mastery. It's all like submit to God and do what you're told and obey the rules.
Those who will not live by the law shall die by the law.
Okay, so let's move on from this. Earlier, Brett sent me something where Ken Wilber was talking about members of the intellectual dark web. I don't know all of the people who he mentioned. He was saying someone was definitely integral. I don't remember who that was. I don't think I know who that was. I'm not familiar with his work. But Jordan Peterson isn't integral. I mean, Ben Shapiro is definitely not integral. Sam Harris, I would say, is mostly integral. He's still got like an issue or two that he has to clear up. He's the only one of these new atheists who can integrate all four quadrants. He's not an upper right quadrant reductionist. He's interested in what science can say about morality. He's interested in non-superstitious spirituality, or a spirituality that honors and respects the truth of the East and harmonizes it with what we know in science. And I think he's doing lots of good things. It's interesting because I definitely think that Jordan Peterson actually has the missing piece of the puzzle. Of course, Harris has a lot of the missing pieces of the puzzle that Peterson is missing. And so that's why it's really great to see them coming together, because together when they talk, there are these certain moments at which they're starting to talk about an integral project, this project that avoids the dogmatic, hard and fast, this is the strict way that it is, this is the way to talk about things, and the meaningless void, and finds some kind of a way to create meaning and structure in the middle, and what that might look like for future societies. That's what these talks that they're doing, these face-to-face talks that they had been doing, were talking about. And the way that they were starting by steel-manning each other, that stuff is about as close to integral as you can get in mainstream conversations. They're coming right up to the edge of it. I mean, they come up to the edge of it, and then they quickly fall back into what they know, and that's kind of frustrating. But they're getting close, and they really are both, honestly, openly engaging with each other at the highest of both of their own potential, and really trying to be open and honest and skillful with each other. I mean, it's really beautiful to watch. It's definitely a huge improvement from the time when they were on Sam Harris's podcast together. These new talks are like, wow. And the fact that it's such a mainstream conversation that so many people are so interested in every single one of those conversations, the audience voted away their Q&A and sacrificed it just to be able to hear them to continue to talk about these things that they find so important. I think that in itself is very telling. Yeah, I'm super impressed with those talks. I think those talks are probably some of the closest things I've seen in the intellectual dark web to integral. Now, that being said, I don't really know who all the players in question are when we're talking about the intellectual dark web, so I would have to kind of examine a case-by-case kind of thing, but I'm going to say for the most part, no. Like Ben Shapiro, for example. This dude is traditional modern. He on postmodernism from a traditional and modern place, not from an integral place. So I would definitely not consider him to be even close. Peterson and Harris, I would say, are both kind of getting close in their own way. Like Peterson, for example, a lot of people are like, yeah, Peterson is integral. Look, he's doing all this trans-rational communication. And while it's true that he is doing trans-rational communication, whenever he's asked to make a pre-trans distinction, he has a super hard time doing it. He just can't seem to make a distinction between the poetic metaphorical truth and the objective literal truth. He has a real hard problem with it because he doesn't quite have the semantics to be able to frame all this in a way that works. He's talking about truth in kind of a simplistic way. Granted, Harris has his problems around this too, where he calls it the fact of the matter. Fact and matter are both referring to objective truth, and he's trying to refer to the absolute truth. So there's some semantic confusion on both sides, and with a little bit of an integral framework, they could clear up a lot of this stuff, which is what I try to talk about in my video, What Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson Can Learn from Each Other. I really feel like they could converge around an integral perspective and be able to do a lot of good work to make the world a better place for everyone, as we should all be trying to do. This is the real exciting thing. I really love the fact that more and more people are starting to get past this whole my truth, your truth thing, and they're really starting to realize that what we can all build together through a process of refinement in a non-biased and skillful way is way better than what any of us could build on our own. We're all working on it together and standing on the shoulder of giants, and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm glad that the intellectual dark web is really starting to push at the cutting edge of some of this pre-trans fallacy, because basically that's what I would say is that a lot of these people do have a post-conventional perspective, so they don't fit into these simple simplistic binaries of like, this is good, this is bad, that you normally get in the conventional area. They all have nuanced perspectives on topics, and so they don't neatly fit in the red or blue camp. So that's really cool. In that way, I guess I could see why Wilber would want to say that they're starting to be integral, because they're starting to arrive at this kind of middle position where they can see both sides. But to me, until they can really make those distinctions, for real integrate diversity with discernment, that's what integral is. It's not just integrating diversity. That's green. And people like Peterson and some of these other people, they are really good at integrating diversity, but the discernment isn't quite there yet. They're not really able to make those skillful distinctions, and you can tell because when people ask them straightforward questions, they don't make those distinctions. They stutter and fumble and they fail. The next thing I'm going to go into is my spiritual and philosophical history. Someone was asking me about this. So I'm a thinker type. That's my Enneagram type. I used to always be strong INTJ. Sometimes I test INFJ. I'm real close to the TF spot in the middle on that line, and I'm actually pretty happy with that. Sometimes people are like, David, you think too much. But the reason I think in the way that I do is because understanding is a form of compassion. It's a way of actively caring about something, is to study it, to try and figure out what's going on, to think about it. That means you care. So I think some people who say that, their problem is that they don't think enough. They don't care enough. And they really are just getting upset with you for caring, not for thinking. But I digress on that point. Some of my earliest, best memories are being a little kid, taking a bath with my dad, and asking him about the nature of the universe and what's going on. I mean, his answers weren't good, and I had to unlearn a lot of that stuff later. But I remember being really interested in what's going on and philosophical things and psychological things from a very, very early age. My mom will definitely tell stories about deep questions from a young age and the difficulty of trying to figure out how to answer some of that stuff. My parents, they always treated me kind of grown. They talked to me like a person. They didn't baby talk me. And my mom also kind of always treated me like her therapist. My mom has always talked to me about her problems and laid heavy things on me, and my dad was a manipulative sort of person, kind of a con man, so I was definitely confronted with psychological manipulation and issues of what's true and dealing with truth very early on, and from a young age I had to learn how to see past what was being said by a person and try to figure out what their intentions were. I had to learn how to do this pretty quick just to be my father's son because he's such a manipulative person. I was recently talking to my friend Kai about lessons that I learned from my dad as being a con man and a manipulative person. And one of the things is, don't get your hopes up. I learned that very young. And another thing I learned is the power of creativity and believing in yourself. So like, I've seen my dad from a young age be able to have an idea and to put in time and work and manifest that idea and make it real. So this is one of the positive things that I learned from him. If he was a better person and he was using his skills for good, he could have really done a lot more good in the world. I do think he tried to do some good in the world, but he just let his ego and his shadow get in the way, and I saw that and learned from that too. A lot of this stuff shaped my perspective. I grew up in the church, so when my parents' relationship went really wrong, I leaned heavy on the community of the church and the love that I found there. And I had spiritual experiences in the church. I felt filled with love on many occasions and overflowing, and I'd seen my mom speak in tongues and people like rile around on the floor. I've seen a lot of stuff in church. And those people aren't faking. That's all real. And one of the major things I had to grapple with when I was coming out of this stuff and unlearning it was like, what's going on with that stuff? Which is what I talk about a little bit in my semantic compatibilism, a trans-rational post-formal view video, is like, what's going on with these spiritual experiences and what kind of conclusions you can or cannot draw about reality based on these experiences. And I think just the fact that you see people all over the world having these profound experiences, and yet they're all claiming exclusivity like their worldview is the only true worldview, kind of shows that it's not. Whatever they're tapping into has nothing to do with what their worldview is about. That really changed my view about a lot of these things, including the reliability of personal experience. I was on the worship team, so I know how they use music and suggestion to psychologically manipulate people into having experiences, and they talk about how they're going to do it. They practice it. It's part of it. So all of these things went into shaping me. And I definitely definitely felt betrayed when I started to realize my way out of it. I think part of how I was able to do that was I was married and in a stable relationship. Having a stable relationship is like another kind of security that allows people, I think, to be able to grow out of things that they maybe previously held on to for security. So I would say the love and support of my wife at the time really enabled me to look honestly at some of this stuff, as well as being friends with a guy who was super smart and influenced me and inspired me. He was taking all kinds of philosophy classes. My buddy Kevin, I talk about him all the time. When I make my videos, in fact, I'm kind of channeling him because that's the kind of influence he had on me. He made philosophy fun and interesting and special, and it wasn't boring. My experience of philosophy is not academic. It's passionate people who are interested and put in the time to study and talk one-on-one with each other. I've done some of the academic stuff too, just in the study part, but for the most part, my experience of philosophy is more like one-on-one or in a small group. That's where philosophy goes down the best. So he really expanded my worldview and showed me a lot and showed me lots of maps, and I was learning so fast. It was amazing. That existential stage in my life was really amazing, and I was at a certain point where I was really angry about some of this religious stuff, and I said something in front of his mom like, religion is the worst thing that ever happened to humanity. In reaction to me dissing on Christianity or religion, she gave me Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth, and this is what really helped me to reintegrate a lot of the value that I had from my early religious times, and to really see that there was a deeper value and meaning in some of that stuff. And it really gave me the tools to be able to go in and value all these other traditions, and it really laid the groundwork for me for the integral realizations that I would come across later. I have a journal from back in the day, my realization period. Let me grab it. I want to just show you some of the drawings I have in here because it's pre-integral, before I knew about integral, and yet it's the groundwork. I mean, look, you see this divisions of 4 right here? I'm okay, you're okay, I'm not okay, you're okay, like all these things, these different possible perspectives. This is what me and Kevin call divisions of 4, and basically this is just applied to ontology, and that's your integral 4 quadrants. And as you can see over here on the side, a spiraling dialectic. The groundwork was set, and I would say that's what integral intuitions start to look like. Before you even really have the maps or the words to be able to talk about it, I think people do start to almost come up with their own ways of trying to talk about it. I was studying a lot of things and writing little notes about it. Here, look at this. The idea that everything is black and white. When you go out far enough, it all sort of turns to gray or whatever. I don't know. Silly little journals. Let's see, are you talking about integrating the yin and yang and having no judgment with either? Oh, you mean with the little picture I showed you? I guess it's kind of a comment about scale. Like, up close, on a relative scale, you can say, oh, this is the problem, and this is the pro and con of this, and this is the pro and con of that. But when you zoom way back, it all just turns to gray. So like from an absolute perspective, it just is what it is. But then when you zoom way into a relative perspective, you start to see more black and white. I don't know, it's kind of just a bit of poetry or a metaphor, a visual piece of poetry. How does it resonate with you? Is that what you're thinking? Because the thing about the no judgment thing, like that works at the absolute scale, that big picture scale where it turns to gray. This is what we call non-dual perspective in integral. We include both absolute and relative truths. So in an absolute sense, everything is perfect. Evolution is a perfect process, and it's fluxing in time perfectly. Everything is going great. But from a relative perspective, I'm over here and you're over there, and there are a lot of problems in the world, and we need to work to make them better. And so the non-dual perspective is including both of those truths at once. I have this line in one of my songs called The Middle. It goes, in the middle, everything is just where it should be, and I'll be fixing everything, 'cause that's including me. So it's like everything's perfectly in flux, and yet I am in that flux, and I'm gonna engage with it too, because that's part of the perfection. That's what I'm saying why I like Andrew Cohen and his work, is because he really emphasizes this creative becoming dimension. God is both being and becoming. So God isn't just transcendent stillness, but God is this active becoming force, this God in engagement with the world, creating the world, this kind of creative becoming. I think that stuff is super beautiful. Far too many people at the highest levels of development get up to the top of their own growth and development and learning and mastery mastery, and then they just stop engaging with the world and go off and be a monk in their own cave. It's like, the world needs us. The world needs us to come back and stand up for what's good, and that means judgment. Now, part of that is also realizing that people are in their own development, and it's okay that they think what they think right now. We're going to engage with them where they're at in a skillful way. So that's both action and non-action without attachment to outcomes in the world but not of it. It's engagement to the best of your ability in a skillful way, but also in a way that lets it be. That balance, like finding peace in your passion and peace in the struggle, that non-dual perspective. I have a video about non-dual perspective too, where it compares Christian symbolism with the more pagan or satanic symbolism, and it talks about an Aristotelian golden mean, how there are these two extreme perspectives, and ultimately we can find a synthesis or some kind of a middle perspective between the two that holds the best of both of them and gets rid of the cons of both of them. How do you see your previous differentiation? For example, what were the dominant memes at the time? Where does that leave you? Okay, we could look at my development through spiral dynamics if we wanted to. I would say if you took snapshots of me at different stages of development in my life, you'd be like, oh, well, that's clearly blue David, and that's clearly orange David, and that's clearly green David. I mean, clearly. And you know, there's some blurring the lines in between. But I came across Ken Wilber through Buddhism. It was through Buddhism that I found Andrew Cohen's work, and I really liked his work because it emphasized the creative becoming dimension, and a lot of Buddhism tends to be a lot about bypassing. So it was through his talks with Wilber that I found integral theory. All right, you guys. Thanks so much for hanging out today. I feel like we talked about a lot of good stuff. It was truly good to spend this time with you. I don't know if I fully covered my history. I'm sure there's some other things I could have said about that, but that's a pretty good outline. Thanks so much to everybody for hanging out. If you're watching this on YouTube, definitely go to Facebook and join my friends and fans group. There's going to be a link in the description. Make sure you like and subscribe. Smash that stuff. Life is a pendulum. I like that. That's the whole like spiraling dialectic, right? It's this kind of swinging back and forth as we move upward, hopefully. All right, you guys, it was great chilling with you. Peace.